That's the other one. So there's actually 3, but SouthFork is the furthest along, but it's also much smaller than the other 2.
What goes into, like, how big are these going to be? How far offshore are they going to be? And is there environmental impacts with them as well that we may not be aware of?
Yeah, that's like a whole book you just asked about. But
we got all night.
They're like 15, 20 miles offshore, and I'm kind of thinking of the whole East Coast because there's about 15 projects.
So you can't even see it at like 15 miles. You're not going to really see it.
It's more like 30. You will never see it. 20, you'll see it rarely.
Yeah.
From what BOEM, which is the federal agency in charge of doing the main, check off of this project, they're saying at 20 miles you'll see it on 20% of days, and that's because of weather. Like in the summer you'll never see them. You know how hazy it is. You can't see anything in the summer, but in the winter when it's clear, then you'll see
when everyone's at the beach.
When everyone's at the beach. Very good. But they are big, and that's why this is a tricky issue for Surfrider, because it's not like oil and gas, which is very clearly not really good for anything. Wind is very good for climate change, and we're very concerned about the effects of climate change. But offshore wind does have impacts. I mean, these are like 700, 800 foot tall giant metal turbines offshore. And
will they affect surf?
I haven't seen anything. I've definitely looked for that because obviously our folks are concerned about that. They put them about a mile apart.
Yeah.
I haven't seen any evidence that they would affect surf. There was one study with a model that said if you built 10,000, they could slow down,
attenuate.
You could slow down local wind.
Yeah. Which
I don't even know if that would affect swell, but I don't see us getting to 10,000 right now. Right now on the whole East Coast, it'll be about 2,000 right now.
And they're super spread out, it sounds. So it's a mile apart.
Yeah, a mile apart.
So if anything, it just might bend the swell a little bit and make it come in a little bit more, create some wedges.
There'll be more, there'll be like offshore waves you can get.
Oh, tow-in styles.
So is there, do you have the numbers on what does this mean for amount of electricity for ratepayers in Long Island, New Jersey, our areas at 5,000? Is there a sense of? I know there's some megawatt numbers they're putting out, but how does that convert into like how many houses?
It's if you can remember it, it's 1 megawatt is about 300 homes.
Oh wow!
So the turbines off of Block Island that you're familiar with were 6 each. The next projects that'll go in the next few years, in theory, if they get approval, will probably be 8 per turbine, 8 megawatts. And then the ones they're talking about in 5-6 years, they're talking about 12s, jumping up to 12. So it's the bigger they are, the better, really, because then there's less of them. It's less impact on the environment because you don't have to have as many.
Yeah.
So two groups that have concern with this, that come from this sort of odd perspective, not odd perspective, but
Surfrider has concerns too.
Yeah, I would say. And then you have the bird community and the fishing community, and it gets more broadly into these questions of there's clearly going to be some effect on habitat, and all these companies have to do environmental impact statements and reviews, but we're getting to a point where, this is sort of my opinion, but I think this isn't that shouldn't be controversial. It's like we're really running out of time, and that the effects of rising sea level and warming of water is affecting the constituent group concerns of these organizations anyway. So how do we balance this out? But maybe we just don't have time to think about it.
Yeah, there's definitely a push from an impetus of just intense, really bad effects of climate change that we're like, okay, we have to do something. So that, I mean, I would rather not have turbines, out there, but we need that energy. We need to switch off of fossil fuels. So if we can do it responsibly, I think we have to do it, because climate change is just such a hammer, and to your point about some of those groups, I've been very surprised, because from my studies of this issue, it seems like one of the possibly biggest impacts is birds, and actually bats too. But Audubon has actually come out pretty strong. I mean, they're like, you have to do as much mitigation as possible, but we support these projects, and that's pretty crazy coming from from the bird.
So they're the
bird people.
They recognize
they are the bird people.
They're just like, climate change is going to wipe out like a quarter of birds or something. So
what about the fishermen? I mean, to me, it seemed like actually it would create more of a fishing habitat, or a place where they can actually find reliable, groups of fish clustering.
Yeah, you're both right, because it's the recreational fishermen are generally pretty pro, because any hard structure, and if you've seen it off of Block Island already, there's already mussels growing, so they're pretty pro. The commercial fishermen are concerned about a certain amount of days per year when the weather's nasty. Are they not going to be able to tow through the turbines how they used to tow through the turbines? So they've been really involved, and they're a diverse group. So some are just like, no, never, and some are like, okay, we'll work with you. And there was actually a big announcement last week where 2 or 3 companies that are next to each other organize their turbines into rows instead of having them all over the place, so that the fishermen could actually tow through it.
The biggest pushback, though, comes from residents and homeowners who live on the coast, which I find kind of ironic, because those homes aren't going to be there anymore if we don't do anything about the climate change. So, what was it? Senator Kennedy, Ted Kennedy, who's pro-environment, he fought tooth and nail to have the wind farms, that whole project scrapped off Martha's Vineyard.
Yeah. What was that called again? The
Cape Wind?
Cape Wind.
Yeah.
That was like
the
a 10-year
Cape.
fight. Yeah, it's, for homeowners, the impact is view shed, being able to see them. So some people think they're hideous. Some people think they're beautiful. So you have that kind of pushback, and then
these people should look at their own homes first. Some of them are eyesores in itself.
Rip. Dude. But the other impact to them is that you have to obviously hook these projects up to the grid, so they have to come ashore. That's called the power cord.
Yeah,
and it has to come. They come to the beach, and then they drill, and I'm making hand motions for no reason, but they drill deep under the beach and come up and connect to infrastructure. But people are like, it's a scary power cable. I don't actually know what their issue is with it, because there's power cables everywhere.
Well, how different is it from like the LNG pipeline, and wanting, obviously different in terms of what's in it, but it's still, there's still a pipeline. There's still going to be wires going through. There'll be some sort of protuberance, no?
I mean, with the SouthFork one, which is furthest along, so we actually know what it's going to look like, it literally will be a manhole cover on a street. Well, they'll have to rip up the street like any construction.
Oh,
put it under
we're
the street.
We're in Brooklyn here. Have you seen it lately?
There'll be. I know. I biked over here. It was a disaster. There'll be the manhole cover so they can access it, but it'll basically be, you won't see anything.
Yeah.
But down in Delaware, there's another project that we're starting to take a look at, where they want to build a very large landing kind of electric connection right near the beach. And that one, we're like,
right.
Why would they want to
like
do
a substation?
like that?
Yeah, and I think it's because there must be less infrastructure already there. But the proposal right now is to put in Fenwick State Park, which is a state park. They want to put this large building
Yeah, and those are real deal.
And it's on a barrier island, so you're kind of like there must be somewhere else.
That doesn't with tidal with rising waters. Like, why would you want to do that?
Just, I mean, I was saying, this is a tough one so we might, we haven't come out for or against any of these projects yet because they're all kind of still too far away. But we might come out against at least the landing part in Delaware. Mm-hmm. The one in the Hamptons doesn't seem like there's much to be mad about.
I will, per research, and this is
push back, Ben. Give it to him.
Which we'll caveat it that way. But there is a Orsted which the wind power company has identified Wainscott, the beach lane in Wainscott, New York, and more to the point when you're talking about that park in Delaware. Anyone who's been out east, the dune paradise that is Hither Hill State Park, as possible landing sites for the transmission cable, and the groups that are opposing it, one of them, this Montauk United, is pro wind energy. They're just saying, maybe similar to what Surfrider might say, we're all about wind energy, but this specific piece of infrastructure in this site, Hither Hills, is wrong. And there's this Wainscott Citizens Committee that, of course, also opposes the landing site. And there does seem to be is this NIMBY? And I would just knowing how beautiful, or rather more importantly, how fragile the dunes of Hither Hills State Park are, probably not a good idea to put any new infrastructure there. But at some point, we need landing sites for these cables, and there's not going to be a great piece of beach that isn't beloved by some group and isn't fragile. It's just inherently fragile habitat.
Yeah. I think the trick is if you can drill into the beach, come up under it so you don't see anything, and then keep going until you get somewhere that's not fragile or sensitive, and then do your connection. Like in Delaware, don't stop at the barrier island that's 1 foot off of sea level. Keep going through, keep going and get, inland where it's
probably costs a lot
farmland.
More, though, right?
It probably does cost more, and that's probably why there was.
Yeah. I have the solution.
First option.
We need to put an artificial reef where it's going to land, so that way the surfers surfing the wave will distract from the cable.
There you
and
go.
like that, I don't know if you've seen Greg Weber. He has that floating reef thing now, where it's like a whole. It's really interesting. I highly recommend it. It's really cool concept, but I don't know. I think there are things you can do to disguise or put lipstick on it to cover it up in some way. It doesn't have to be ugly either, does it? I don't know.
I don't think so. I don't know, but it
seems
tricky.
like a good opportunity to make like an art piece or work in collaboration with the community, perhaps to maybe instead of treating it like an eyesore, to be something to be proud of, and to make it into a structure that people can be kind of like, our energy comes from wind.
I think they should hire you.
Yeah. Well,
marketing director.
I am for hire.
But one thing that changes people's tune about this, other than the sort of halo of feeling good about seeing maybe turbines at work or knowing their electricity comes from a clean source, is rates. How much am I paying for electricity? Bottom line, maybe not the folks in Wainscott that aren't concerned, but for the most part, what people's electric bill drives a lot of behavior, purchases, complaints. And for those on Block Island, which is a very unique situation given the power infrastructure that was there, the rates didn't... Rhode Island ratepayers still pay a very comparatively high price for their electricity, and they are literally in the view. They look at the turbines that send them power. So, how is it going to be overall for LIPA customers, who I think is one of the utility that is purchasing this power?
Yeah, I mean, from what I've read. Anytime you build any infrastructure, that price basically raises your rate. So if they're going to build a new nuclear power plant or a gas power plant, and with the SouthFork project, they actually said, give us some bids from different options. And there was an option to expand the